Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we'll be exploring the timeless world of honey. This sticky golden substance begins its life in the harps of flowers and embarks on a fascinating journey of transformation. It's gathered in fields and forests, shaped by countless wings and carried home in ways that feel almost impossible. Along the way, it becomes food, medicine, and mystery, all at once. This is a story of renewal, of landscapes magically turning into sweetness, of tiny lives working together to create something that can outlast centuries. There is chemistry here, and survival, and a quiet kind of brilliance that hums just beneath the surface of everyday life. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there is nothing you need to do but relax. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. And allow your eyes to grow heavy as we wander through this small and remarkable world together. Let's begin. A single spoonful of honey can contain nectar from thousands of flowers. Before it reaches a jar, it starts as scattered droplets hidden deep inside blossoms. A bee gathers only a little at a time, and each visit is brief, almost weightless. Then she moves on, across orchards, hedgerows, meadows, gardens, and wild corners of land. The same act repeats again and again, until what seemed too small to matter becomes something substantial. That is part of the wonder. A mouthful on toast can represent an immense map of visits, each one linking insect, flower, weather, and place. It is not produced in one spot like fruit on a branch. It is assembled from a landscape. A single spoon can therefore contain traces of clover, lime trees, blackberry flowers, or whatever happened to bloom within reach of the hive. What tastes simple on the tongue was born from an almost unthinkable number of tiny encounters, stitched together by persistence. Honey can stay edible for thousands of years without spoiling. That sounds like a myth until archaeology starts agreeing with it. Sealed vessels recovered from ancient tombs have contained contents still recognizably intact after astonishing spans of time. The reason is not magic, though it can feel close. This substance is hostile to decay in several different ways at once. It contains very little free water, so many microbes cannot grow. It is acidic, dense with sugar, and chemically unfriendly to the ordinary processes that ruin food. Most things in a kitchen are racing toward breakdown. Bread dries or molds. Fruit bruises and collapses. Milk turns swiftly. Here, the opposite seems to happen. Stability becomes the story. That helped make it precious in the ancient world, where preservation was power. To hold sweetness that resisted time so stubbornly must have seemed extraordinary. Even now, the idea that something made by bees can outlast kingdoms gives it an almost uncanny aura. Bees must visit millions of blossoms to fill a single jar. Once you picture that scale, an ordinary shelf item stops looking ordinary at all. A jar is not just the work of one afternoon in a hive. It is the outcome of repeated flights across days and weeks under changing skies, through shifting blues, with thousands of workers contributing tiny loads. Each bee returns carrying only a small amount, so abundance is created by multiplication on a staggering scale. That is what makes the final result feel almost impossible. We are used to harvests that look large while they are being made. Apples pile up. Wheat fills a field. With bees, the labor hides in miniature. The effort is dispersed across air and distance. You never really see the whole thing happening at once. yet it adds up. When you lift a jar, you are holding a monument to repetition, navigation, and collective endurance, built from flower visits so numerous that the mind almost resists the number. Honey starts as nectar, then becomes something entirely new. At first, nectar is simply a sweet liquid offered by flowers to attract pollinators. It is watery, temporary, and meant to be taken. Once collected by a bee, that liquid enters a different world. Enzymes begin altering its chemistry. Back at the hive, it is passed from worker to worker, spread into cells, and exposed to moving air until much of the moisture is gone. The end result is not just concentrated nectar. It is transformed food with new properties, greater stability, and a different role altogether. That change is one of the most beautiful parts of the story. Flowers did not make it. Bees did. They take something fleeting and remake it into something durable. In human terms, it is closer to craft than collection. A blossom offers the raw beginning, but the hive performs the real conversion. What lands on a spoon is therefore not merely gathered from nature. It is patiently reworked by it. Inside a hive, honey is stored like bottled sunlight. The phrase feels poetic, yet it is also surprisingly close to the truth. Flowers use sunlight to build sugars through photosynthesis. Nectar is one expression of that captured energy. Bees gather it, process it, and lock it away in wax cells for the seasons when blossoms vanish. So within the comb, light from past days is held in edible form. Summer becomes reserve. Bright weather becomes fuel. That is why a hive in winter depends so completely on what was stored before. The colony lives on the memory of flowering months. There is something deeply moving in that arrangement. A field blooms for a short while, then fades, but its energy does not disappear. It is carried home and sealed in the dark, where thousands of insects will later survive on it. The comb, then, is not just a pantry. It is a vault of transformed sunshine, saved against cold, hunger, and the long silence between blossoms. Some ancient tombs still held honey fit to taste. Whether every famous story is perfectly documented or not, the larger truth remains remarkable. Honey has turned up in funerary contexts so old that entire civilizations had long since vanished, and in some cases it remained astonishingly well preserved. Imagine that for a moment. A sweet food gathered by bees flew into the ancient world, was placed beside the dead, and waited through centuries of dust, collapse, and forgetting. Then people opened the vessel again. The idea feels almost impossible because taste is usually the most fragile of experiences. Meals vanish in minutes. Flavors live briefly in memory. Yet here is one that can bridge ages. That endurance helps explain why honey carried symbolic power in so many cultures. It did not behave like ordinary food. It seemed to resist time itself. When a substance can survive beside mummies and still resemble itself, it begins to occupy a strange borderland between nourishment, relic, and message from the distant past. Honey is made through teamwork so vast, it feels impossible. No single bee could create what we casually pour from a jar. The scale belongs to the colony. Foragers search for blossoms and return with nectar. House bees receive it and continue the process indoors. Others ventilate the hive with beating wings to reduce moisture. Wax workers build and maintain storage space. Guards protect the entrance. Nurses tend developing young, ensuring the next generation of labor is ready. What looks like one product is really the visible result of an entire society coordinating without central command. That is where the astonishment deepens. The hive does not function like a factory directed by a manager. Order emerges from instinct, signals, timing, and shifting roles. Each bee performs only part of the whole, yet the whole remains coherent. When we speak of honey, we are really speaking of collective intelligence made edible. It is one of nature's most elegant examples of many small lives producing something no individual life could achieve alone. Honey is the only food made by insects that we steal. That alone makes it feel a little strange. We do not raid ant hills for stored grains, and we do not pry open wasp nests for supper. Yet for thousands of years, people have smoked bees from trees, climbed cliffs, opened hives, and carried away the winter food of another species. What we take is not a casual byproduct. It is a carefully engineered reserve, gathered from flowers, transformed inside living bodies, dried with effort, and sealed for survival. In that sense, every spoonful is a small act of cross-species theft that became tradition. And somehow bees kept drawing us back. Honey was worth stings, smoke, ladders, ropes, and risk long before sugar-filled bowls on every table. That odd relationship says something profound. From the beginning, humans sensed that this golden store was not ordinary sweetness. It was treasure made by a civilization smaller than a thumbnail. Not all honey tastes sweet in quite the same way. That may sound obvious at first, but the differences can be startling. One variety may seem light and floral, while another feels dark, malty, herbal, smoky, or even faintly bitter. Some are delicate and almost transparent in flavor. Others arrive with force and linger in the mouth like strong tea or toasted sugar. The reason lies largely in the flowers. Bees are the makers, but the landscape writes much of the flavor. Nectar from orange blossom does not become the same thing as nectar from buckwheat, chestnut, heather, or thyme. Even wildflower batches can shift from season to season, depending on what bloomed nearby. That means tasting different honeys can feel less like trying brands and more like visiting places. It is a geography of sweetness. A spoonful may carry orchard, moor, woodland, or mountain slope. So the surprise is not that it tastes sweet. The surprise is how many directions sweetness can travel. One drop of honey can carry the story of a landscape. To look at it is to see only amber light. To think about it properly is to realize it may contain the fingerprint of an entire place. The flowers matter, of course, but so do rainfall, heat, soil, altitude, season, and the timing of bloom. A dry year can alter nectar flow. A nearby woodland can shape flavor differently from open farmland. In some samples, pollen grains remain as tiny clues, allowing experts to read where the bees foraged and what was flowering around them. That turns sweetness into evidence. It becomes possible to ask where this came from, what was growing there, and what kind of environment supported it. In that sense, honey is more than food. It is a record. A small spoon can preserve traces of ecology, weather, and plant life in concentrated form. Few everyday ingredients invite that kind of reading. Fewer still let you taste a region as if the land itself briefly dissolved on the tongue. Bees thicken nectar by passing it from mouth to mouth. At first, that sounds almost too strange to be true, yet it lies at the heart of the transformation. A returning forager does not simply pour her load into storage and leave. Instead, the liquid is transferred to another worker, then sometimes to another again, in a chain of exchanges inside the hive. Each transfer exposes it to new enzymes and more contact with air. What began as a thin floral drink starts moving toward something denser, richer, and far more durable. The process is intimate, communal, and astonishingly practical. It is also a reminder that the hive does not separate chemistry from cooperation. The making happens through both at once. A human cook might rely on pans, heat, and bowls. Bees rely on bodies, timing, and repeated sharing. In that way, the food is shaped not just by flowers and instinct, but by a sequence of living handoffs, each one nudging it closer to its final form. Fresh nectar is far wetter than the honey we know. The liquid drawn from flowers is closer to a sweet drink than the thick substance that waits in a jar. It can contain so much water that, on its own, it would never keep for long. That difference matters because it reveals how much work still lies ahead after collection. A bee returning from a flower is not carrying the finished product home. She is bringing home the beginning of one. In a sense, the hive receives a fragile material that still belongs to the world of petals, warmth, and daily bloom. It has not yet crossed into long-term storage. That is what makes the later result so impressive. The sticky weight we spread on bread began as something loose and perishable, closer to syrupy rain than preserved food. Once you imagine that contrast, the transformation becomes easier to appreciate. What seems stable and ancient in a jar was once as temporary as the flower that offered it. Honey becomes stable because bees drive out most of its water. This is one of the great turning points in the story. As long as too much moisture remains, the liquid is vulnerable. Yeasts can grow. Fermentation can begin. The stored food would become risky for the colony instead of reliable. So the hive must solve a practical problem that every preserver of food would recognize. It must remove water. Bees spread the liquid in open cells where it can lose moisture across a broad surface. They work with warmth, airflow, and patience, rather than with ovens or sunlight on a windowsill. Over time, the contents become concentrated enough to resist the ordinary fate of sweet liquids. That shift from unstable to stable is what makes the substance so remarkable. It is not merely collected sweetness. It is sweetness made safe for the future. The colony creates shelf life through labor, and in doing so, turns a fleeting harvest into a dependable reserve that can wait through difficult months. Hive air can turn liquid nectar into long-lasting food. Inside the colony, air is not just background. It is part of the machinery. Workers fan their wings to keep conditions moving and controlled, sending currents through the interior that help moisture leave the open cells. What sounds simple is actually extraordinary. A mass of insects creates a ventilation system with their own bodies, and that invisible movement helps determine whether gathered nectar remains vulnerable or becomes durable. We tend to notice the visible things in nature, the flowers, the comb, the bees themselves. Yet here, one of the decisive forces is airflow. The hive uses it like a tool. No furnace roars, no metal machine hums, and no hand turns a dial. Still, the atmosphere is being managed. Tiny workers are shaping the future of their stored food by managing the space around it. It is a beautiful example of how something invisible can become essential, and how survival can depend on a current you never see. Bees seal ripe honey behind wax like living archivists. Once the contents have reached the right condition, the cell is closed with a thin cap of wax. That moment carries a sense of completion, almost of judgment. The hive has decided that this portion is ready to keep. It can now be stored safely, protected from excess moisture in the air, and set aside for later use. The image of archiving is hard to resist because the act feels deliberate and orderly. One cell after another becomes a sealed record of past flowering, each one preserved for a future need that has not yet arrived. There is elegance in that restraint. The colony does not simply make food. It catalogues security. A cone full of capped cells is a visible promise, but effort from earlier weeks has been successfully converted into stored wealth. To look at it is to see foresight made tangible. Behind each pale wax lid waits a concentrated reserve, hidden until hunger or cold finally calls for it. A honeycomb stores food with astonishing geometric efficiency. The comb is so familiar that it is easy to forget how brilliant it is. At a glance, it looks decorative, almost like a pattern someone might press into tiles. In reality, it is a storage system that solves several problems at once. It must hold large amounts of food, fit many cells tightly together, remain light enough to hang, and do all this using material that is costly for bees to produce. The answer is a structure that wastes almost no space. Cell meets cell without awkward gaps. The walls are shared. Strength and economy arrive together. There is beauty in that, but also ruthless practicality. Nature did not stumble into a charming pattern here. It arrived at one of the most efficient arrangements possible for the task. That is why the sight of comb feels so satisfying even before we know why. We are looking at order that earned its place, a pattern where elegance is not extra, but the result of necessity. Hexagons let bees store more honey with less wax. Among the many shapes that could fill a surface, this one offers a rare combination of economy and strength. Circles leave wasted gaps. Squares and triangles can pack tightly, but they do not enclose space with the same balance of stability and material saving. The six-sided cell solves the problem beautifully. It allows a large storage area while keeping wool length relatively low, which matters because wax is not free. Bees must produce it from their own bodies, so every bit saved is valuable. That turns the comb into an engineering achievement hidden inside what many people treat as a rustic curiosity. Mathematicians have admired the efficiency of this arrangement, yet bees were exploiting it long before anyone wrote proofs about it. The marvel is not just that the pattern looks neat. It is that the pattern helps a colony stretch its resources farther. In a place where survival can depend on reserves, shape itself becomes part of the strategy. Bees make wax from their own bodies to store honey. That fact gives comb a different kind of wonder. The cells are not gathered from the outside world like twigs or mud. Worker bees produce tiny wax scales from glands on the underside of the abdomen, then chew and shape them into the familiar structure. In other words, the pantry is built from the builders themselves. That makes the cost of storage feel immediate and intimate. Wax is not some cheap packaging material lying around in a meadow. It is a bodily investment. The colony must spend energy to create the very architecture that will later hold its food. Once you grasp that, a sheet of fresh comb starts to look almost miraculous. Every pale wall represents effort converted into structure. The hive is manufacturing both the container and the contents, building the shelves and stocking them at the same time. Few food systems feel so complete. It is nourishment housed inside a material born from the workers who need it. Honey is a preserved summer packed away for winter. That idea is not metaphor alone. The warm months bring blossoms, long foraging days, and the chance to gather energy while the world is giving it freely. Winter offers none of that. Flowers disappear, temperatures fall, and venturing outside can become dangerous or pointless. So the colony uses the season of abundance to prepare for the season of absence. What gets stored is not just food, but time. Bright days are converted into future survival. That gives the substance a moving kind of meaning. It carries the memory of sunlight, bloom, and open air into months when the landscape has closed down. Humans preserve summer too, in jams, dried herbs, bottled fruit, and cellars full of roots. Bees do it in their own extraordinary way. They gather sweetness when the world is generous and hold it ready for hardship. A comb full of reserves is therefore more than a harvest. It is foresight shaped by the calendar of flowers. The hive survives cold months on food gathered in bloom. When winter settles in, the colony cannot rely on fresh foraging to sustain itself. Instead, the bees cluster together for warmth and live from what was stored earlier in the year. That means survival depends on planning that happened long before the first frost. The workers at the heart of the cluster generate heat through movement, while others shift position over time so the burden is shared. Around them lies the reserve that keeps that living engine fueled. Without enough stores, even a strong colony can fail before spring arrives. That makes the colder season a kind of test, one in which the success of past gathering is measured against present need. The flowers are gone, yet their energy remains available because the hive prepared. There is something deeply compelling in that image. A summer landscape can vanish from sight completely, while inside the hive its gathered richness still sustains a whole society through the hardest part of the year. Honey contains enzymes that begin working before we ever taste it. Long before it reaches a spoon, it has already been chemically nudged in a new direction. As nectar moves through bees and into the hive, enzymes begin breaking larger sugars into simpler ones and setting the stage for the substance we recognize later. That means the transformation is not only about drying and storage. It is also about invisible reactions unfolding from the earliest stages. There is something thrilling in that. The sweetness is being edited before human hands ever touch it. A flower offers a starting liquid, but bees introduce tools that keep working within it. Those tools help shape texture, stability, and some of the unusual properties that made people wonder about this food for centuries. We tend to imagine taste beginning on the tongue. Here, the story begins much earlier, inside a process already alive with change. By the time we lift a spoon, much of the hidden work has quietly been done. Bees add chemistry to nectar as they transform it. It is tempting to picture them as gatherers alone, like tiny flying collectors bringing raw sweetness home unchanged. In truth, they are also processors. Their bodies contribute substances that alter what they collect, steering it away from simple plant nectar and toward something new. That shifts the whole story. The hive is not merely a warehouse where floral liquid accumulates. It is a biochemical workshop. Each returning forager brings in material from the outside world, and the colony begins modifying it almost at once. In human terms, it is the difference between storing grapes in a basket and beginning to make wine. The starting material still matters deeply, but so does what happens after arrival. Bees are therefore both harvesters and chemists in motion. That combination helps explain why the final substance has qualities that flowers alone did not provide. The wonder lies in the partnership. Plants make the invitation. Bees change the outcome. Honey is acidic enough to trouble many microbes. For a substance associated with comfort and sweetness, it has a surprisingly unfriendly side. Many microbes prefer conditions that are less harsh, less sour, and more forgiving. This one offers the opposite. Its acidity helps create an environment where many unwanted organisms struggle to thrive, which is one reason it keeps so well compared with ordinary sweet liquids. That hidden sharpness is part of its power. You do not necessarily taste it as tartness, yet it is there in the background, quietly helping defend what the hive has stored. The contrast is fascinating. Something that feels rich and soothing to us can present a chemical challenge to the tiny life forms that would otherwise feast on it. In that sense, its sweetness is slightly deceptive. Beneath the pleasant surface lies a set of conditions that are much less welcoming than they first appear. A golden spoonful can therefore be both inviting and, on another scale, fiercely inhospitable. Honey pulls water from bacteria with ruthless efficiency. This is one of the most startling parts of its defensive character. Because it is so concentrated with sugar, it exerts a strong pull on water. For microbes, that can be disastrous. Cells depend on water to function, and when the surrounding environment draws it away, life becomes difficult or impossible. It is a simple principle with dramatic consequences. No battle is visible. No violent reaction announces itself. Yet on the microscopic level, the conditions are punishing. The sweetness acts almost like a trap, creating an environment that dries out would-be invaders. That helps explain why the substance can remain stable when so many other foods quickly collapse into mold or rot. There is elegance in the mechanism because it relies on concentration itself. What makes it thick and luxurious to us also helps make it hostile to contamination. A spoonful seems soft and indulgent, but at microbial scale it can be remarkably severe. Some honeys can slowly release hydrogen peroxide on wounds. That detail gives an old remedy a surprising scientific twist. In certain kinds, enzymes and moisture can interact in a way that produces small amounts of hydrogen peroxide over time. Not the dramatic fizz of a medicine cabinet bottle, but a gradual release that may help explain why some forms gained a reputation in wound care. The effect is not universal in the same way across all varieties, and it is not the whole story. Yet it is remarkable that a bee-made food can generate a familiar antiseptic compound under the right conditions. No wonder ancient people treated it with respect even when they lacked modern chemistry. They could see results without knowing the hidden mechanism. Today, that knowledge deepens the fascination rather than replacing it. A substance gathered from flowers and stored in wax can, in certain circumstances, participate in healing chemistry. The more closely you look, the less ordinary it seems. Honey fights spoilage using several defenses at once. That layered strategy is part of what makes it so resilient. It does not depend on one magical trait. Instead, its strength comes from a combination of low moisture, acidity, dense sugars, and reactive compounds working together. If one barrier were all it had, the story would still be impressive. But this is more like a fortress designed with overlapping walls. Microbes that dislike dryness also face chemical stress. Those that tolerate one difficulty may still run into another. The result is a food that resists decay with unusual determination. That helps explain why it fascinated healers, traders, and ordinary households across so many centuries. It was not just pleasant. It was dependable. There is a lesson in that design. Nature often achieves durability through teamwork rather than through a single dramatic trick. Here, a cluster of modest properties combines into something extraordinary. Preservation emerges from many pressures leaning in the same direction. Its sweetness comes from sugars simpler than table sugar. The familiar white crystals in a sugar bowl are built mainly from sucrose, which is a paired molecule that the body must break apart during digestion. In this case, much of the sweetness already comes in simpler forms, especially glucose and fructose. That difference shapes both flavor and behavior. Fructose is very sweet, while glucose is more eager to form crystals, so the balance between them can influence how the substance tastes and how it changes in the jar over time. Suddenly, sweetness stops being one bland category and becomes a more interesting mixture. Not all sweet things are sweet in the same way. Here, the chemistry helps explain why the flavor can feel rounded, layered, and less straightforward than spoon sugar dissolved in tea. It also reminds us again that bees are not handing us nectar unchanged. The sweetness we meet has already been reworked into a different molecular arrangement before it ever reaches the table. Honey holds trace compounds that flowers lend to it. Beyond the major sugars, there is a quieter cast of characters present in tiny amounts. These include aromatic molecules, plant chemicals, and mineral traces that can shape scent, flavor, and identity far more than their quantity might suggest. A small amount of the right compound can shift a whole experience, just as a pinch of spice can change an entire dish. That is why one variety may hint at herbs, resin, blossom, smoke, or even medicinal notes, while another seems soft and buttery. The main sweetness may be broadly familiar, but the finer details come from the floral world that fed the hive. This makes the substance feel almost like a conversation between bees and plants. The bulk gives it body, yet the subtle compounds give it personality. Without them, many varieties would blur together. With them, each becomes more distinctive, more place-bound, and far more interesting to smell before you ever taste it. Even tiny differences in nectar can reshape honey completely. A slight shift in the flowers available, the timing of bloom, or the weather during foraging can send the final result down a different path. That is what makes this food so sensitive to circumstance. Two hives in neighboring places may not gather from precisely the same mix of plants. Even the same hive can produce noticeably different batches as the season moves along and one set of blossoms gives way to another. This sensitivity gives the whole subject a kind of thrilling instability. There is no single, fixed essence waiting behind every jar. Instead, each batch is a response to conditions that were alive and changing at the time it was made. That means small causes can produce large differences in flavor, aroma, color, and texture. The outcome is not random, but it is deeply contingent. What looks like one ancient, steady substance is actually capable of remarkable variation when the inputs shift by even a little. Honey keeps changing after harvest in quiet chemical ways. Many people imagine the story ending the moment it is poured into a jar. In reality, it continues to evolve. Aromas can soften or deepen. Color may darken gradually with time and warmth. Crystals may begin to form depending on the balance of sugars. Delicate floral notes can fade if stored poorly, while other flavors become more pronounced. None of this means it is failing. It means it remains a living chemistry of sorts, still responding to temperature, light, and time. That ongoing change makes storage matter in a way most people never consider. A fresh jar and an older jar may tell slightly different stories, even when they began from the same harvest. There is something beautiful in that slow afterlife. The bees are finished, the beekeeper is finished, yet the substance goes on becoming itself in subtle ways. Even at rest on a shelf, it has not completely stopped moving through time. Honey can taste floral, smoky, herbal, fruity, or almost medicinal. It is easy to speak of sweetness as though it were one simple thing. Yet this is where the subject suddenly opens into a whole gallery of surprises. One spoon may suggest blossom and citrus. Another may hint at dried herbs, warm wood, ripe fruit, spice, or a sharp note that seems almost like medicine from an older world. That range can catch people off guard because the ingredient looks so familiar. Golden, amber, dark, runny, set. We think we already understand it. Then the flavor arrives with character, weight, and direction. It can feel airy or brooding. It can seem bright and brief or deep and lingering. In some varieties, the scent alone is enough to stop you. You begin to realize that this is not one taste repeated 1,000 times. It is a whole family of expressions shaped by the living world outside the hive, each one carrying its own distinct voice. The flowers nearby decide far more than the bees do. The bees perform the labor, yet the landscape writes much of the script. A colony can be healthy, busy, and skillful, but if the nearby bloom comes from lime trees, bramble, heather, or chestnut, the result will follow those floral sources more than any individual choice by the insects. That gives the surrounding environment enormous authority. In effect, the hive is translating a local plant community into food. Move the same bees to a different valley, and the character of what they store can shift dramatically. That is why place matters so much. Fields, hedgerows, orchards, woodland edges, and mountain slopes all offer different possibilities. The bees gather, but the flowers decide what can be gathered. There is something wonderful in that balance. It means each batch is partly a portrait of where the hive stood. The insects are makers, but the neighborhood of blossoms shapes the personality of the finished result in profound ways. Orange blossom honey and buckwheat honey can seem like different foods. Set them side by side, and the contrast can feel almost theatrical. One often arrives light, fragrant, and lifted with notes that seem touched by citrus groves and warm air. The other can come across as dark, dense, earthy, and bold enough to surprise someone expecting simple sweetness. It may carry hints of malt, molasses, or something almost barn-like and robust. The shared name suddenly seems too small for both of them. This is one reason the subject becomes so addictive once people start paying attention. A person who thinks they know what honey tastes like may really know only one corner of its range. The difference between these two examples shows how plant source can split the category wide open. It is like discovering that two liquids with the same origin story can end up with completely different personalities. One feels bright and perfumed. The other feels dark and elemental. Both are real. Both are astonishing. Some honeys are pale as straw, others nearly black. Before aroma or taste enters the story, color already tells you that great variety is waiting. One jar may glow with the softness of dry grass in sunlight. Another may look coppery, mahogany, or so dark it seems, almost like polished wood seen by lamplight. These differences are not cosmetic accidents. They reflect floral source, mineral content, seasonal conditions, and the compounds gathered from the plant world. That means color can offer a first hint about character, though never the whole answer. A pale sample may prove delicate or surprisingly complex. A dark one may feel rich and forceful, or reveal unexpected bitterness beneath its sweetness. The important point is that the visual range alone breaks the illusion of sameness. We are not dealing with a single golden standard. We are dealing with a spectrum. The jar becomes a clue before it becomes a taste, inviting the eye into the mystery before the tongue joins in. Darker honeys often carry stronger, deeper mineral flavors. That darkness can signal an entirely different experience waiting in the spoon. Instead of airy sweetness and light blossom notes, you may meet something fuller, heavier, and more resonant, with hints of malt, earth, resin, or a faint tang of iron-rich depth that feels almost savory at the edges. It is not that pale examples lack interest. Many are exquisite. But darker ones often seem to arrive with more gravity. They can feel older in spirit, more rooted, as though the land itself pressed harder into them. Part of that impression comes from the greater presence of minerals and certain plant compounds, which can deepen both flavor and color together. The result is a sweetness with shadows in it. That complexity is part of the appeal. It moves the experience away from candy and towards something more layered and adult. One taste can suggest blossom. Another can suggest bark, soil, and weathered fields. Both come from flowers, yet they seem worlds apart. Heather honey can turn spooning into a slow, stubborn task. This variety is famous not only for taste, but for behavior. Instead of flowing easily, it can become thick, jello-like and resistant, clinging to the spoon as though reluctant to leave the jar. That texture can surprise anyone expecting the usual smooth pour. It almost asks to be negotiated with. Part of the fascination is that the challenge is not a flaw. It is a mark of identity. Beekeepers and honey lovers often prize it precisely because it behaves in this distinctive way. The floral source gives rise to a substance that seems to have decided it will not hurry for anyone. And when you finally taste it, the reward can be intense, with rich, aromatic notes that match the dramatic texture. So here, the pleasure begins before flavor even lands. You feel the resistance, see the slow movement, and sense that this is not ordinary table sweetness. It is character made visible, almost sculptural in the jar. Acacia honey can stay liquid for surprisingly long periods. For many people, crystallization seems inevitable, as though every jar must eventually turn grainy and firm. Then along comes this variety, often remaining clear and flowing far longer than expected. The reason lies largely in its sugar balance, which makes it less eager to form crystals quickly. That gives it an almost glass-like elegance on the shelf. It stays pourable, smooth and bright, while other jars may begin to cloud and thicken. There is something graceful about that persistence. It feels composed, unhurried, and stable in its own special way. The flavor often matches the appearance, tending toward a lighter and more delicate profile that lets the clarity seem almost reflected in taste. This makes it a wonderful reminder that texture and appearance are part of the story too. Not every variety follows the same timetable. Some change quickly. Others seem to linger in a lucid state, holding on to transparency as they're resisting the usual march of time. Tupelo honey is prized for resisting crystals longer than most. In parts of the American South, this quality helped give it near legendary status. Gathered largely when bees forage on Tupelo blossoms in wetland regions, it is admired for remaining smooth and liquid with unusual persistence. That alone would be enough to make it memorable, but scarcity adds another layer of romance. The bloom window is limited, the geography is specific, and the conditions need to cooperate. So the final product carries not just a physical trait, but a sense of place and fleeting opportunity. To many admirers, it feels like a seasonal treasure that could only come from that watery landscape of river systems and swamp forests. The resistance to crystals becomes part of a bigger story, one involving geography, timing, and regional pride. Some honeys impress through intensity. This one fascinates through poise. It seems to remain itself with uncommon steadiness, as though holding the memory of a brief flowering season in liquid suspension for longer than expected. Chestnut honey can taste bitter in a way people adore. That may sound contradictory at first, because bitterness is often treated as a warning rather than a pleasure. Yet in the right context, it becomes thrilling. This variety can carry a strong, assertive edge that cuts against the expectation of simple sweetness. Instead of soft comfort, it offers complexity, tension, and a finish that lingers with almost tannic force. For some people, that first taste is startling. For others, it is exactly why they return. The fascination lies in the refusal to be easy. It asks the palate to pay attention. Much like dark chocolate, black coffee, or certain Amaro liqueurs, its appeal grows from contrast and depth rather than from immediate softness. That makes it an important reminder that honey is not confined to one emotional register. It can charm, but it can also challenge. When bitterness enters the frame, the whole category feels more sophisticated, more varied, and much more alive than many people ever imagined. Wildflower honey is the taste of a season, not a species. Unlike varieties tied mainly to one floral source, this kind gathers its identity from a shifting crowd. Whatever happened to be blooming within reach during that stretch of time helps shape the result. That means it is never just one plant speaking clearly. It is a chorus, and the balance of voices can change from week to week, valley to valley, even hive to hive. In one season, clover may lead. In another, blackberry, dandelion, bramble, or countless smaller contributors may leave their mark. This gives the jar a special kind of richness. It does not point to a single flower. It points to a moment in the year when many flowers overlapped in the bee's world. Tasting it can therefore feel like tasting time itself, condensed into sweetness. A monofloral variety tells a focused story. This one tells a broader one, carrying the mixed character of a living landscape at a particular moment before it changed again. Manuka honey became famous because science took it seriously. For a long time, many people treated medicinal claims around honey as old folklore dressed in golden light. Then certain researchers began studying Manuka more closely, and the conversation changed. This variety, linked to the nectar of the Manuka shrub in New Zealand, drew attention because some of its antibacterial effects did not disappear when scientists accounted for the usual hydrogen peroxide story. That made people sit up. Here was a honey that seemed to hold on to unusual activity in a way that demanded careful explanation. Laboratories, clinicians, producers, and regulators all became interested, and a once regional product began gaining global fame. What makes this so fascinating is not simply that one variety became popular. It is that the modern world, with all its testing and skepticism, looked at an ancient substance and decided it deserved serious investigation. In that moment, honey stepped out of folklore and back into science with real authority. Not every medicinal honey works in quite the same way. Once people hear that some varieties can help in medical settings, it is tempting to imagine a single shared mechanism behind them all. The reality is more interesting. Different kinds can owe their usefulness to different balances of acidity, sugar concentration, hydrogen peroxide production, plant-derived compounds, and other chemical features that vary with source and peen. Processing. That means one variety may be valued for one reason, while another gains attention for a different profile entirely. The subject becomes less like discovering a single miracle ingredient and more like opening a family of related but distinct natural materials. This matters because it keeps the story honest. Honey is not one uniform medicine in 1,000 jars. It is a broad category with members that can behave differently under scrutiny. That variety is part of the fascination. Nature did not produce one neat answer. It produced many versions, and each asks to be understood on its own terms. Hospitals have used special honey dressings on difficult wounds. That fact can stop people in their tracks because it sounds ancient and modern at the same time. In carefully prepared medical products, certain honeys have been used in dressings for wounds that are hard to manage, especially where maintaining a helpful environment matters. This is not a matter of casually squeezing breakfast ingredients onto an injury. It belongs to the world of sterilized medical materials, clinical judgment, and controlled use. Even so, the image remains astonishing. In a hospital full of advanced tools, one of the substances brought into service can still be something made by bees. Part of the appeal lies in the contrast. Stainless steel, synthetic fabrics, packaged dressings, and then within that setting, a refined version of a material known since antiquity. It reminds us that progress does not always mean abandoning the old. Sometimes it means testing old ideas properly, discovering where they truly help, and giving them a precise place in modern care. Honey was medicine long before modern laboratories arrived. Long before anyone could speak of microbes, enzymes, or osmotic pressure, people were already turning to it when bodies were injured or unwell. They used it on wounds, mixed it into remedies, and treated it as something more than a sweetener. That early trust is fascinating because it arose from observation rather than theory. People saw what happened when it was applied, eaten, or preserved with other substances, and over time, those experiences hardened into tradition. In many cases, they had no modern explanation for why it seemed useful. They simply noticed that it belonged in the healer's toolkit. This gives the history of medicine a humbling quality. Sometimes practical knowledge arrives first, and scientific explanation catches up centuries later. Honey sits right in that gap between experience and understanding. Its medicinal reputation was not born in a laboratory. It was earned in kitchens, homes, temples, and workshops where people paid close attention to what actually seemed to help. Ancient Egyptians placed honey in both remedies and rituals. That pairing tells you how unusual its status was. It did not belong only to the sick room or only to the table. In ancient Egypt, it moved between practical medicine, daily nourishment, offerings, and the symbolic world of the sacred. It could be applied in healing mixtures, offered to the gods, and placed among grave goods for the dead. Few substances crossed those boundaries so easily. That is part of what makes it so compelling in historical terms. People did not see it as a minor luxury. They treated it as something potent, valuable, and worthy of ceremonial use. In a civilization that cared deeply about order, preservation, and the afterlife, this bee-made food found a place in all three. The same material could soothe the living and accompany the dead. That kind of cultural reach is remarkable. It shows that honey was never just an ingredient. It was a substance charged with meaning as well as utility. Greek physicians praised honey as food, medicine, and preservative. In the classical world, it occupied an enviable position because it seemed useful in almost every direction. Greek medical writers and thinkers valued it not only as nourishment, but as something that could be combined with other ingredients, applied in treatment, and used to help preserve certain materials. That triple role gave it unusual prestige. A substance that feeds, supports healing, and helps resist decay begins to look almost ideal. It is no wonder that physicians writing in a culture so attentive to diet and balance took it seriously. They were not praising a curiosity. They were praising a versatile tool that seemed to fit neatly into both everyday life and medical practice. The fascination deepens when you realize how long that reputation endured. Across centuries, people kept finding reasons to keep it close at hand. In that sense, honey became more than a product of bees. It became part of an entire way of thinking about health. Honey appears in some of humanity's oldest written healing traditions. When early medical texts began recording remedies, this substance was already there. That means its place in healing reaches back not just through memory and oral custom, but into the written record itself. Across ancient cultures, people copied instructions onto papyrus, clay, and parchment, and honey kept returning as part of the conversation about care. That recurrence matters. It suggests broad recognition across very different societies that this was a material worth preserving in writing. Once a remedy enters a manuscript, it becomes more than local habit. It becomes knowledge meant to travel. There is something deeply moving about that. A bee-made food moved from the field to the hive, from the hive to human hands, and from human hands into the earliest medical literature. It crossed from practice into text. In doing so, it secured a place in civilization's memory. Long after healers died, the written words remained, carrying its reputation forward to readers centuries away. Even now, researchers keep finding new things inside honey. You might think such an ancient substance would have given up all its secrets by now. Instead, the closer scientists look, the more complexity they often find. Different compounds, botanical markers, microbial interactions, Regional signatures and subtle chemical differences continue to emerge under modern analysis. Part of the surprise is that the substance seems so familiar. It sits in kitchens, markets, gift shops, and breakfast trays. Yet under the lens of careful research, it becomes layered and elusive again. That is one of the great pleasures of studying nature. The everyday can turn mysterious the moment attention sharpens. Honey rewards that attention unusually well because it is made at the meeting point of plants, insects, chemistry, and environment. It is not one thing but many processes folded together. So the story remains open. The old ingredient is still capable of producing new questions, and that is often the sign of a subject deeper than it first appears. Honey can soothe the throat without acting like a drug. That distinction is part of its quiet appeal. When people take it for a sore throat or a stubborn cough, the comfort may come not from a drug-like attack on the cause, but from its texture and coating effect as it passes over irritated tissues. It can bring relief through contact, softness, and persistence, rather than through the kind of chemical action we usually associate with medicine. There is something elegant in that. Not every form of help needs to arrive as a pharmaceutical strike. Sometimes ease comes from protection, moisture, and a calmer surface. This helps explain why it has remained a household favorite for so long. The experience is immediate and understandable. You feel the change as it happens. That does not make it magical, and it does not make it a cure for everything. What it does make it is memorable. A simple spoonful can create a sense of comfort that has kept people reaching for it generation after generation. Sometimes the oldest remedies survive because they truly worked. History is full of treatments that faded for good reason, and that makes the survivors more interesting. When a remedy endures across centuries, across cultures, and then still attracts scientific interest in the present, it raises an important possibility. Perhaps people kept returning to it because it offered real benefits, even if they did not yet understand the mechanism. Honey is one of the most compelling examples of that pattern. It was not preserved merely by romance or superstition. It stayed in use because it proved useful often enough to keep earning its place. That does not mean every old belief about it was correct. Tradition can exaggerate, but neither should we assume that the old world knew nothing. Sometimes repeated human experience points toward truths that science later clarifies in detail. That gives this story a satisfying shape. Observation came first, explanation followed, and the long survival of the remedy begins to look less like accident and more like evidence. Honey has been found in tombs older than many nations. That fact stretches the mind because it places something so familiar inside a timescale that feels almost unreachable. A jar of honey belongs in a kitchen cupboard, not in the burial chambers of civilizations that vanished before many modern countries were born. Yet archaeology has repeatedly brought the two together. Sealed containers from ancient burials have revealed traces, and sometimes substantial amounts, of this substance surviving deep into the future. It is hard not to feel a shiver at that thought. A sweetness gathered by bees in a forgotten landscape can outlast dynasties, languages, and borders. It can remain while names of kings dissolve into fragments. That endurance changes the emotional weight of the subject. Honey stops being only food and starts becoming something like a time traveler. It moves through centuries without losing itself entirely. Few everyday things can make that claim. Fewer still can sit on a breakfast table and carry such ancient dignity into the present. Prehistoric people painted scenes of honey gathering on cave walls. Long before supermarkets, glass jars, or written recipes, people were already risking stings for sweetness, and they thought the act important enough to paint. In prehistoric cave art, human figures appear climbing toward wild nests, reaching for the stores of bees with baskets or ropes. That image is extraordinary because it proves how old our fascination really is. Honey was not a luxury invented by settled farming societies. It mattered to people living in much harsher worlds where every calorie counted and danger was part of daily life. Imagine the scene for a moment. Smoke rising, hands searching into crevices, bees surging around the climber, and below, a community waiting for the prize. It is not just foraging. It is drama, courage, and reward all at once. The paintings preserve more than a food source. They preserve a human obsession, already thousands of years old, etched into stone before history had a name. For much of history, honey was the world's main sweetener. That simple fact changes how you see the past. Today, sweetness feels cheap, common, and endlessly available. For most of human history, it was nothing of the sort. If people wanted to sweeten porridge, cakes, sauces, drinks, or preserved fruits, this bee-made substance was often the obvious answer. It shaped festive foods, daily cooking, and special treats across vast stretches of time. That means whole traditions of taste were built around it. The sweetness of childhood, celebration, hospitality, and comfort would often have carried its character rather than the clean neutrality of modern sugar. This also gave it social importance. A household with access to honey possessed something that could lift plain food into pleasure. In a world where sweetness was rarer, it had more presence and more meaning. It was not background. It was memorable. To understand that is to realize that honey once helped define what delight tasted like for much of the human story. Before sugar became cheap, honey sweetened empires. Empires are usually described through armies, laws, roads, and trade, yet sweetness has its own quiet history of power. Before plantation sugar spread widely and dropped in price, rulers, merchants, priests, and ordinary households across large states often relied on honey for the sweetness that entered kitchens and ceremonies. Alike, it flavored breads, sauces, drinks, offerings, and preserved foods from one region to another. That means this humble substance moved through the daily life of mighty political worlds, from village hearths to elite banquets. It softened the diet of empire long before refined sugar became a global force. There is something almost grand in that image. Vast systems of administration and conquest, and beside them, bees in fields making the sweetness that would find its way into all levels of society. Honey rarely appears at the center of imperial history, yet it flavored those worlds more deeply than many grander objects ever did. Mead made honey into one of humanity's earliest drinks. Once people discovered that diluted honey could ferment, a whole new chapter opened. Mead turned sweetness into intoxication, and in doing so, it gave honey a second life beyond food and medicine. This drink appears in myths, feasts, rituals, and early social gatherings across many cultures, which suggests just how compelling it must have been. Fermentation already feels a little magical. A still liquid begins to bubble and transform, and suddenly it can warm the body, loosen speech, and mark a celebration. When that transformation begins with honey, the result feels even more ancient and charged with wonder. It is not hard to see why people tied such a drink to gods, poets, warriors, weddings, and sacred hospitality. Mead is more than an old beverage. It is evidence that humans looked at honey and saw not just nourishment, but possibility. They found a way to turn stored sunlight into festival, memory, and song. Some ancient taxes were paid in honey instead of coins. That detail reveals just how valuable it could be. In parts of the ancient world, honey was not merely consumed. It could function as a practical store of worth, something acceptable as payment when metal money was scarce, inconvenient, or simply not the only thing that mattered. A tax paid in honey tells you that officials recognized its usefulness, durability, and desirability. This was sweetness with purchasing power. It could move from hive to household to treasury with real significance attached to it. The image is irresistible. Somewhere in the past, a person might settle an obligation to authority not with silver or bronze, but with jars of bee-made wealth. That brings the economic life of honey into sharp focus. It was portable value drawn from flowers and labor, rich enough in meaning to cross from the kitchen into the machinery of government. Few foods can claim to have once stood where currency normally stands. Honey traveled trade routes long before refrigeration existed. That made it unusually suited to a world where transport was slow and spoilage was constant. Traders moving goods by cart, ship, riverboat, or pack animal had to think carefully about what could survive the journey. Fresh fruit, bruised and rotted. Milk, soured. Meat demanded prompt attention. Honey, by contrast, could endure. Its keeping qualities made it a natural traveler, capable of moving across regions without needing cold storage or special haste. That resilience helped it become part of exchange networks that linked distant places. A jar could leave one landscape and arrive in another with much of its value intact. This gave it commercial reach that many perishable foods simply could not match. There is something satisfying in that image of endurance. While other goods raced against decay, honey could travel with patience. It was built for the pace of the ancient and medieval world, where survival on the road was itself a kind of strength. Monasteries once kept bees as carefully as they kept books. In many religious houses, beekeeping was no small sideline. It fitted beautifully into monastic life because it offered wax for candles, honey for food and remedies, and a rhythm of work that suited communities devoted to order, observation, and self-sufficiency. Monks copied manuscripts, tended gardens, measured time by bells and prayer, and in many places they also tended hives with real seriousness. The parallel feels almost perfect. Books preserved knowledge. Bees provided light and nourishment. Both demanded patience. Both rewarded care. Candle wax mattered especially in a world where sacred space often glowed by flame, and high-quality wax was precious. So the hives supported more than the kitchen. They supported worship itself. There is a lovely harmony in that arrangement. Quiet courtyards, herb gardens, manuscript rooms, and nearby hives humming through the seasons. Honey's story touches learning here, not through science, but through the disciplined life of communities that valued both contemplation and careful labor. In many cultures, honey became a symbol of blessing and abundance. That symbolic role makes perfect sense once you think about what it represents. It is rare enough to feel precious, sweet enough to suggest pleasure, and durable enough to imply lasting good fortune. Across different traditions, it came to stand for prosperity, fertility, hospitality, sacred favor, and the hope of a life made richer and more fruitful. People offered it at ceremonies, served it at weddings and festivals, and used it to mark beginnings that they wanted to be fortunate. Sweetness itself became a language, and honey was one of its clearest expressions. To give it was to wish well. To receive it was to be honored. That symbolic power reaches beyond practical use and into emotion. A spoonful can say more than nourishment. It can suggest a future filled with plenty. Few substances carry that kind of cultural warmth so naturally. The bee-made sweetness became a shorthand for the good life people longed for. Few foods sit so easily between kitchen, temple, and pharmacy. That unusual range is one reason honey feels almost enchanted in human history. Many foods nourish. Some substances heal. Certain offerings belong in sacred space. Honey moves through all three worlds with remarkable ease. It sweetens meals, appears in remedies, and turns up in ritual with no sense of awkwardness. As though it belongs everywhere, people seek comfort, protection, or meaning. That breadth is rare. Bread may feed, but it does not always heal. Herbs may heal, but they are not always symbols of blessing. Honey seems to cross those boundaries naturally. It can be practical in one moment and ceremonial in the next. This gives it a cultural richness that goes far beyond taste. When a substance can serve the body, enter devotion, and support care for the sick, it becomes woven deeply into civilization. Honey did exactly that. It earned a place not just in cupboards, but in some of the most important spaces human beings created. Bees do not make honey for us, but for survival. That truth changes the emotional center of the whole subject. The jar on a breakfast table can make it seem as though honey exists to delight human beings. Yet from the bee's point of view, it is emergency food, future security, and the difference between endurance and collapse. They are not making a luxury. They are building survival into the walls of their home. Every drop is gathered against hunger, cold, and the dangerous gaps between blooms. That makes our fascination with it feel a little humbling. We admire the flavor, the glow, the history, and the mystery, while the colony values something more urgent. To them, sweetness is not indulgence. It is stored life. Once you see that, the hive becomes easier to respect as a society with its own needs and priorities. Honey stops looking like a gift prepared for us and starts looking like a brilliant invention we learned to borrow from another species. Every jar of honey begins as a colony's winter insurance. Insurance is an oddly perfect word for it, because the colony gathers during good times in case the future turns harsh. A field may be full of bloom now, the air may be warm, and nectar may be plentiful, but none of that can be trusted to last. Storms come. Cold arrives. Foraging opportunities vanish. So the hive prepares while it can. In that sense, each stored cell is a promise to the future, built during abundance and meant to soften scarcity. Humans do something similar with savings accounts, stocked cupboards, and reserves laid aside for uncertain months. Bees do it with astonishing discipline, converting floral opportunity into edible security. That makes every jar feel different once you understand its original purpose. What reaches our kitchens began as a colony's answer to risk. It was never just sweetness waiting to be enjoyed. It was a plan against failure, created by insects that must think ahead without ever writing a word. Worker bees may spend their lives supporting honey they never eat. That fact gives the hive a kind of tragic grandeur. A worker bee lives only a short time during the busy season, and much of her life is spent laboring for a future she may not personally enjoy. She may forage, process nectar, ventilate the hive, or build comb, all to help create stores that will sustain the colony long after she is gone. In human terms, it feels almost noble. Her work is real, essential, and often directed toward a shared tomorrow rather than immediate personal reward. That is part of what makes social insects so captivating. The individual life can be brief, but the collective life continues. Honey becomes one expression of that continuity. It is built from countless acts of labor, many performed by bees who will never be present when those reserves are finally consumed. A jar therefore contains not only sweetness, but sacrifice. It is a monument to effort poured into a future larger than the worker herself. The colony treats honey like emergency fuel and stored memory. Fuel is the obvious part. It powers muscles, warmth, and survival, when fresh forage is impossible. But there is another sense in which it acts like memory. It is the preserved record of where the colony has been successful, of which season offered abundance, and of how earlier labor can remain present in the hive long after the blossoms themselves have vanished. In stored form, past opportunity remains accessible. A flower visited weeks ago still matters because its nectar has become part of the reserve. That gives the comb a strange emotional quality. It is not only food waiting to be eaten. It is accumulated history, a way for the colony to carry the vanished landscape forward into leaner times. The hive cannot write diaries or maps, yet its stored sweetness remembers in a practical way. Summer lingers inside it. Good days remain available. When the bees feed on their reserves, they are living from earlier success made durable. Honey lets a superorganism survive when flowers disappear. A hive is often described as a superorganism because the colony functions less like a crowd of separate animals and more like one larger living system. Different bees perform different roles, information moves through the group, and survival depends on coordination at the level of the whole. In that larger body, honey behaves almost like stored blood sugar or fat reserves. It is the energy bank that keeps the system alive when the outside world stops offering easy fuel. Once flowers disappear, the superorganism must turn inward. It cannot rely on constant gathering anymore. It must survive on what it already transformed and stored. That is what gives the substance such biological importance. It is not a pleasant extra. It is what allows a distributed living intelligence to persist through interruption. When the landscape goes silent, the hive does not immediately fail because it carries the season within itself. Honey is the reason that continuity remains possible. A hive without enough honey can starve in sight of spring. This is one of the harshest truths in beekeeping and in the natural life of colonies. Survival is not secured simply because winter is nearly over. A hive may endure the darkest months and still fail at the threshold of recovery if the reserves run too low before blossoms fully return. That timing makes the danger especially cruel. Warm days may begin to appear. Light may lengthen. The world may seem to promise renewal. Yet promise is not the same as food. If enough nectar has not begun flowing again, or if the colony consumes its last stalls too soon, starvation can arrive just as hope seems closest. That narrow gap between endurance and collapse is part of what makes stored food so vital. Spring is not a switch that flips everything safe again. It is a transition, and transitions can kill. A colony must bridge the final distance on reserves alone, or the coming flowers may arrive too late to matter. Bees measure good forage in ways humans almost never notice. A meadow can look beautiful to us and still mean little to a hive. Meanwhile, a hedgerow, roadside verge, weedy ditch, or overlooked stand of trees may be buzzing with opportunity invisible to casual human eyes. Bees respond to nectar flow, pollen quality, flower density, bloom timing, distance, and weather conditions that shape whether a trip is truly worth making. Their standards are practical and precise. A place is good not because it looks lovely, but because it pays in energy. That difference opens a fascinating gap between human perception and insect reality. We see scenery. Bees see forage economics. They are reading the land through sweetness, efficiency, and return on effort. Once you understand that, ordinary landscapes become more mysterious. Somewhere nearby, the bees may be favoring a patch you barely register, ignoring another you admire, and navigating a floral map entirely different from your own. The world contains more than one version of abundance. Honey production rises and falls with weather, flowers, and timing. It is never guaranteed, even with healthy bees and a capable beekeeper. A colony might seem full of potential, yet the season can turn against it. Rain can keep foragers grounded. Drought can thin nectar. Cold snaps can interrupt bloom. Heat can shorten flowering windows. Even perfect-looking blossoms may offer little if conditions have been wrong. Then there is timing. If the colony reaches peak strength too early or too late, it may miss the best flow. That dependence on alignment makes the whole process feel almost orchestral. Many elements must arrive together in the right moment for abundance to happen. When they do, the hive can surge. When they do not, the season may disappoint. This uncertainty is part of the fascination. Honey is not produced by effort alone. It also depends on environmental luck and ecological synchrony. A jar on a shelf can therefore represent not just work, but a fortunate meeting of season, place, and timing. A strong nectar flow can transform an entire hive's mood. Beekeepers often describe it almost like a change in atmosphere. When nectar is pouring in, the colony can become focused, purposeful, and intensely active, as if a great opportunity has opened and everyone knows it. Foragers stream out and back. Receiver bees stay busy. Comb may be built faster. The whole hive can feel driven by abundance. There is urgency, but not panic. It is more like a society suddenly lifted by prosperity. Resources are arriving, work is paying off, and momentum builds. In lean periods, the mood can shift the other way. Activity may feel tighter, more cautious, or more strained. That contrast is remarkable because it reminds us the hive is not static. It responds to fortune. External conditions can ripple inward and alter the behavior of thousands of insects at once. When a major flow begins, the colony does not merely gather more. It seems to enter a different state, animated by opportunity. When blooms fail, honey suddenly becomes more precious than wax. Wax matters, of course. It shapes the comb, holds the brood, and stores the reserves. But in a season of scarcity, structure alone cannot save a colony. Energy becomes the urgent currency. If blossoms fail through drought, storm, cold, or poor flowering, the value of stored food rises instantly. The hive can live with damaged comb more easily than it can live without enough fuel. That hierarchy becomes stark in hard times. Architecture yields to calories. A beautiful comb means little if it is empty. This is one of the sobering realities hidden beneath the elegance of beekeeping. In abundance, the hive can afford to build, expand, and invest in new structure. In scarcity, survival narrows the priorities. What matters most is what can be burned in the body to keep life going. Honey, therefore, becomes the colony's real treasure when the landscape stops giving. In those moments, sweetness is no longer luxury, but plain necessity. Honey hunters once climbed cliffs by torchlight to steal it. There is something almost mythic about that image, yet it belongs to real human history. In several parts of the world, people sought wild honey in places that seemed designed to keep it out of reach: high rock faces, overhangs, and sheer cliffs where giant colonies nested far above the ground. Hunters climbed with ropes, ladders, baskets, and smoking torches, often in darkness or dim light, while bees swarmed around them in furious defense. One slip could mean disaster. One mistake with smoke could turn a harvest into chaos. And still they climbed. That tells you how precious the reward was. Honey was not just pleasant. It was worth pain, danger, and astonishing nerve. The torchlight makes the whole scene feel even more dramatic. human figures hanging over emptiness, reaching into living clouds for golden stores hidden in stone. Few foods have ever drawn people so literally to the edge of the world. Some people still gather wild honey from giant bees. This is not only a story from prehistory or distant legend. In parts of Asia, traditional honey hunters still seek nests built by giant honey bees, insects large, defensive, and powerful enough to make the task feel almost unbelievable to modern eyes. These bees often build massive single combs in exposed places such as cliff faces or tall branches, and the people who harvest from them must approach with skill, smoke, timing, and immense courage. What makes this especially fascinating is that the practice preserves an older relationship between humans and bees, one based less on control than on negotiation with a wild creature that has never truly agreed to. Domestication. The hunters do not simply open a wooden box in a tidy apiary. They enter the bees' world on the bees' terms. That keeps a primal intensity alive. Even now, honey can still come from direct encounters with raw wilderness, height, heat, and risk. Traditional honey hunting can feel closer to ritual than farming. In many places, it is not treated as a mere extraction of food. It unfolds with repeated gestures, inherited knowledge, specific seasons, and a mood of respect that makes it feel ceremonial. Hunters may prepare tools in prescribed ways, choose exact moments in the year, work in teams whose roles are shaped by tradition, and carry songs, prayers, or customs that bind the act to community memory. That difference matters. Farming aims at regularity, management, and steady yield. Honey hunting often feels more like an encounter with something powerful and slightly unpredictable, where success depends not only on effort but on timing, courage, and a proper way of doing things. The atmosphere can therefore become solemn as well as practical. People are not just gathering sweetness. They are stepping into a pattern older than themselves. That gives wild honey a different kind of meaning. It arrives not only from bees and flowers, but from a human ritual of approach. Humans have risked stings, falls, and smoke for honey. The list of dangers tells its own story. Stings are obvious, though even they can be severe when thousands of angry defenders erupt at once. Falls may be worse, especially where nests hang from cliffs, trees, or structures that require climbing. Then there is smoke, a tool that calms or confuses bees when used well, but which can choke, blind, or turn treacherous in the wrong conditions. Taken together, these risks make honey one of the strangest foods in human history. People did not merely pluck it like fruit. They often had to stage a hazardous operation to obtain it. That gives the reward a different emotional charge. When a substance is gathered at that cost, it feels earned in a deeper way. It becomes a prize wrested from danger rather than a simple harvest. Perhaps that is one reason honey carried such prestige. It was sweet, yes, but it also came wrapped in bravery, skill, and the possibility of getting hurt. Few foods inspired such danger before the first taste. Usually, the risk comes after eating. Poison, spoilage, or intoxication may bring trouble later. With honey, the danger could begin before a single drop touched the tongue. The harvest itself might require climbing, smoke, sharp tools, balance, teamwork, and the willingness to face a furious colony defending its stores. That reversal is striking. The peril belonged not to digestion, but to desire. Human beings wanted sweetness badly enough to confront pain and exposure simply to reach it. In that sense, honey reveals something fundamental about us. We are not drawn only to what sustains life in the plainest way. We are drawn to delight, rarity, and rewards that seem worth a story afterward. A person who climbs toward a nest is not acting with cold practicality alone. There is longing involved. Honey occupies that beautiful and dangerous space, where nourishment, pleasure, and daring overlap. Long before the feast begins, the adventure has already started. Wild honey can carry the fingerprint of forests we barely know. When bees forage in remote woodland, mountain valleys, or complex tropical habitats, the result may hold traces of plant communities that most people never notice and could not easily name. There may be nectar from towering canopy flowers, shrubs hidden in understory shade, seasonal herbs that bloom briefly after rain, or trees that belong to ecosystems still only partly understood by science. That gives truly wild honey a thrilling quality. It can be more than local food. It can be a concentrated sample of an environment that remains, to many of us, largely mysterious. Taste becomes a clue. Color, aroma, and texture may all hint at botanical worlds beyond ordinary familiarity. In that sense, a spoonful can function almost like a field note from a forest you have never walked. The bees have surveyed a place your senses did not, and they return with evidence. Wild honey lets remote ecology travel into human hands in edible form. In some places, honey gathering still depends on reading seasons perfectly. Miss the window and the whole effort may fail. Flowers may have passed their best moment, rain may have diluted nectar, colonies may have shifted behavior, or the comb may not yet be ready. Traditional gatherers often rely on close attention to bloom, wind, temperature, moonlight, migration, and the remembered timing of previous years. This is knowledge tuned not to calendars on walls, but to living patterns in the landscape. That makes the practice intellectually impressive as well as physically demanding. A good honey hunter is often part climber, part ecologist, part weather reader, and part historian of place. The work depends on noticing signals that many outsiders would never register. A tree flowering slightly early, a dryness in the air, a change in insect movement. These details matter. They determine whether the journey will bring abundance, danger, disappointment, or nothing at all. Honey, in those places, remains inseparable from exquisite seasonal timing. Honey hunting linked people to bees long before beekeeping existed. Before hives were built, before frames could be lifted, and before beekeeping manuals taught management, there was the older bond of pursuit and discovery. Humans learned to watch bee flight, locate nests, read terrain, and approach colonies that belonged entirely to the wild. That early relationship was not one of ownership. It was one of attention. People had to understand enough about bees to find them, respect enough about them to survive the encounter, and value enough in their stores to keep returning. In that sense, honey hunting may have been one of humanity's first sustained interactions with another organized insect society. Long before domestication, there was fascination. Long before agriculture shaped landscapes, there was this strange partnership of theft, observation, and dependence. That ancient link matters because it reminds us that our connection to bees did not begin in neat apiaries. It began with watching, risking, learning, and reaching into the hidden homes of the wild. Domesticated hives changed honey, but never fully tamed the bees. Modern beekeeping made the harvest more regular, more accessible, and far less dangerous than raiding nests on cliffs or in hollow trees. Wooden boxes, movable frames, and managed colonies brought order to a process that had once depended heavily on hunting and luck. Yet even inside those structures, the bees remain only partly under human control. They still swarm, defend, forage where they choose, and respond to weather, bloom, disease, and instinct, according to rules older than any beekeeper. This is what makes the partnership so interesting. We shaped the housing, not the inner nature. A hive can be managed, but never reduced to a simple machine. The bees remain living agents with priorities of their own. That keeps a trace of wildness present even in the most orderly apiary. Domestication changed our access to honey, but it did not erase the ancient fact that this sweetness still depends on creatures that ultimately answer to themselves. Even modern beekeeping still depends on wild instincts. A beekeeper can provide boxes, monitor health, harvest surplus, and try to guide events, but the core labor still belongs to bee behavior shaped by evolution. No person teaches a forager how to navigate by sun and scent. No person instructs workers to process nectar, ventilate the hive, care for brood, or defend the entrance with coordinated urgency. Those capacities arrive already written into the colony's instincts. Modern methods succeed only because they cooperate with that inherited intelligence rather than replace it. That is a humbling thought. Even at our most organized and technological, we still rely on ancient behaviors we did not invent and do not fully command. The beekeeper is partner, steward, and observer, but never the true author of the hive's genius. Honey remains, at its core, the product of wild biological wisdom. That is part of why it never loses its wonder. However modern the box may look, the brilliance inside it is still profoundly untamed. Honey can crystallize naturally, and that does not mean it failed. A smooth golden jar can seem like the ideal, so when the contents turn cloudy or firm, many people assume something has gone wrong. In truth, crystallization is often a sign that the substance is behaving exactly as its chemistry suggests it should. Some sugars remain dissolved less willingly than others, and over time they begin organizing into tiny solid structures that spread through the jar. What looks like a flaw is often simply a change of state. This matters because it reveals how alive the material remains after harvest. It is not frozen in perfection forever. It continues to respond to its own inner balance. Some varieties crystallize quickly, some slowly, and some in textures so fine they feel almost silky. The surprise is not that this happens, but that we ever mistook constant smoothness for the only natural form. A jar becoming solid can be less a failure than a quiet confession of authenticity. A jar turning grainy is chemistry, not spoilage. The texture can feel startling at first, especially if you expected a clear pour and instead meet a spoonful that seems sandy or thick. Yet that graininess usually has far more to do with sugar behavior than with rot or contamination. Microbial spoilage brings sourness, gas, or other obvious signs of breakdown. Crystals are different. They form when glucose begins separating from the liquid phase and arranging itself into tiny solids, which then encourage more of the same. The result can spread through the whole jar until the texture changes completely. That shift may look dramatic, but it is often perfectly harmless. In fact, it can be one of the clearest reminders that honey is not a syrup manufactured for uniformity. It is a natural product with its own internal tendencies. The grainy spoonful tells a scientific story, not a tragic one. It reveals molecules settling into order, not the food slipping away into ruin. Some people prefer creamed honey precisely because of crystals. To anyone who thinks crystals are a defect, that preference can seem almost backwards. Yet creamed honey turns crystallization into a texture people actively seek out. Instead of large, rough crystals forming unpredictably, the process is guided so that countless very small ones develop in a controlled way. The result is smooth, spreadable, and almost velvety, more like soft butter than sticky syrup. That texture changes the whole experience. It no longer runs off bread or drips from a spoon with such urgency. It settles, holds, and spreads with calm precision. This is fascinating because it shows how a process often feared in the jar can become the source of delight when properly understood. People are not merely tolerating crystals here. They are celebrating them. What many consumers mistake for failure can, under different handling, become a prized style in its own right. Chemistry has not ruined the honey. It has given it a second personality. Warmth can melt crystals, but also blur delicate aromas. There is always a temptation to restore a crystallized jar to full clarity with heat, and in moderation that can work beautifully. The granules soften, the mass loosens, and the familiar pour returns. Yet heat is not a neutral helper. Along with melting crystals, it can also drive off some of the most delicate aromatic compounds that give a fine honey its subtle character. Floral notes can become muted. Lighter scents may thin out. The jar may regain smoothness while losing some of the very details that made it interesting. That trade-off makes warming more than a simple kitchen fix. It becomes a choice about what you value most, texture or nuance. This is one of the loveliest tensions in the whole subject. The desire for visual perfection can quietly erase part of the invisible story. A clear jar may look more appealing, while a cooler one may speak more fully of blossom, field, and season. Honey stored badly can ferment into something fizzy and alive. That transformation surprises many people because it feels more suited to fruit juice or cider than to something so thick and stable. Yet under the wrong conditions, especially when moisture rises enough for yeasts to wake and work, the calm sweetness can begin moving toward fermentation. Bubbles may appear. The aroma can shift. The flavor may tilt towards sourness, tang, or something reminiscent of very young alcohol. What was once quiet and shelf-stable becomes restless. This is not ordinary spoilage in the sense of mold overtaking bread. It is a living biochemical turn, a dormant possibility becoming active when the conditions allow it. There is something dramatic in that change. The same substance that can rest for astonishing lengths of time can also spring into motion if the balance tips. A badly stored jar becomes a lesson in contingency. Stability was never magic. It depended on the rules being kept, and when they are broken, the sweetness begins to wake. Water is the quiet line between honey and fermentation. Such a small factor can seem almost too simple, yet moisture level helps decide whether the substance remains peacefully preserved or becomes vulnerable to yeast activity. Below a certain point, the environment is too concentrated and inhospitable for fermentation to get going. Add too much water, whether through premature harvesting, poor storage, or careless handling, and the balance changes. Suddenly, the door opens to a different future. That thin line is fascinating because it shows how preservation can depend on restraint rather than abundance. More water sounds harmless. In this case, it can be exactly what turns stability into risk. It is almost poetic. The substance owes its endurance to dryness, and the thing most likely to undo that endurance is the return of moisture. A single hidden variable becomes the boundary between stillness and activity. Honey lives on one side of that border. Mead and sourness wait on the other, patient for the threshold to be crossed. Filtering honey changes texture, but also removes part of its story. Straining can make a jar look cleaner and feel smoother, which is why it appeals to producers and buyers alike. Bits of wax, stray particles, and some suspended material are taken out, leaving a more uniform appearance. Yet the process can also take away small clues about origin and handling that a less processed jar might still carry. Texture becomes simpler. The visual impression becomes tidier. At the same time, some of the natural complexity is reduced. This creates an interesting tension between polish and personality. A heavily filtered product can seem more refined, while a less filtered one may feel closer to the hive and the place it came from. Neither choice is automatically right in every context, but they tell different stories. One aims for clarity and consistency. The other preserves more of the material's original character. In that sense, filtration is not just a technical step. It is an editorial decision about how much of the source remains visible. Raw honey can contain pollen that reveals where it came from. Those grains are tiny, easy to overlook, and often present in very small amounts, yet they can act like botanical fingerprints left behind by the landscape. When bees gather nectar and move through flowering plants, pollen may enter the honey along the way. If the product remains relatively unprocessed, some of those grains stay suspended within it. Under a microscope, they become clues. Different plant species produce pollen with distinct shapes and surface patterns, allowing trained eyes to identify at least part of the floral world behind the jar. That makes raw honey feel almost like a natural archive. Hidden inside the sweetness may be minute evidence of orchards, hedgerows, meadows, or woodland boom. This is one of the most enchanting things about it. The story of place is not only tasted or smelled, it can sometimes be seen. A spoonful becomes more than a food. It becomes a tiny record of where bees have been. Experts can sometimes trace a honey's origin through microscopic clues. This kind of detective work sits at the meeting point of science and patience. Analysts may examine pollen grains, tiny particles, and structural details that most people would never notice, then compare them with known botanical and regional patterns. From those minute traces, they can sometimes infer where the product was made, what kinds of plants contributed to it, and whether the label telling its story is likely to be trustworthy. The scale of the clues is part of the wonder. Vast questions of geography and authenticity can hinge on things almost too small to imagine clearly. A jar on a table may look silent and anonymous, yet under magnification, it can begin to speak. That ability turns honey into evidence. It is not only enjoyed, traded, or gifted. It can also be interrogated. The microscope becomes a bridge between the visible and the hidden, allowing experts to read a landscape from fragments suspended in sweetness. Fraudulent honey exists because real honey is worth imitating. Counterfeiting is, in a strange way, a backhanded compliment. Nobody bothers faking things that carry no value, no reputation, and no market demand. The existence of fraudulent honey tells you that genuine honey commands trust, money, and desire strong enough to tempt imitation. Syrups may be blended in, origins may be misrepresented, and labels may promise floral or regional identities the jar did not truly earn. That deception matters not only because it cheats buyers, but because it exploits everything people love about the real thing. It's linked to bees, flowers, place, labor, and rarity. In other words, the fraud borrows prestige from authenticity. That makes the real article seem even more precious. A true jar contains the work of a colony, a landscape, and a season. A fake attempts to copy the appearance while skipping the wonder. The very existence of imitation reminds us how remarkable the genuine substance really is. Some honey can be dangerous when certain flowers poison the nectar. Most of the time, people speak about honey as though it was safely golden by default, yet there is a stranger side to the story. In a few regions, bees may collect nectar from plants whose chemicals remain potent enough to trouble the humans who later eat the finished product. That means a substance usually linked with comfort can, under rare circumstances, become a kind of botanical trap. The danger does not come from spoilage or fraud. It comes from the flowers themselves. The bees are simply doing what bees always do, gathering from the landscape available to them. What changes is the chemistry of that landscape. This is one of the reasons honey never stops being fascinating. It is not merely sweetness in the abstract. It is an extract of real ecosystems. And ecosystems can include plants that defend themselves with powerful compounds. In rare cases, the hive carries that wildness straight through into the jar. Mad honey once confused armies with its strange, intoxicating power. This sounds like legend told around a fire, but ancient writers described troops being overcome after eating toxic honey in regions around the Black Sea. The likely cause was nectar gathered from certain rhododendrons containing greanotoxins, plant compounds capable of causing dizziness, weakness, sweating, low blood pressure, and confusion. That gives the story an almost unbelievable twist. Honey, usually a symbol of reward and abundance, briefly becomes a weapon of geography. A marching army meets an unfamiliar landscape, samples its sweetness, and suddenly finds itself disoriented by the plants of that place. Whether every detail survived perfectly in the retelling, the larger truth remains remarkable. Nature sometimes hides its sharp edges inside attractive things. Mad honey is one of the best examples. It reminds us that the relationship between bees, flowers, and people is not always simple. Sometimes the sweetness carries the logic of a wild mountain shrub rather than the comfort of the table. Rhododendron nectar can turn honey into a natural toxin. That fact feels almost impossible because rhododendrons are so often admired for beauty rather than danger. Yet some species contain greanotoxins, and when bees gather enough nectar from them, those compounds can persist into the finished honey. The result is a product that looks ordinary enough, amber, inviting, and familiar, while carrying chemistry capable of affecting the heart, nerves, and sense of balance. This contrast is part of what makes the subject so memorable. The threat is not visible. It arrives hidden inside something people are used to trusting. In the right region and season, floral elegance can travel through a hive and emerge as a substance with surprising physiological power. That does not make all rhododendron honey dangerous everywhere, and it does not turn ordinary honey into a menace. What it does reveal is how completely honey reflects the botanical world around it. The flowers write more into it than sweetness alone. Even honey has a wild side that resists simple praise. By the time people learn about toxic honeys, fermentation, fraud, and the harsher realities of colony survival, the subject starts to feel richer and more honest. It is still beautiful, but no longer simple. Honey can preserve and comfort. It can also mislead the unwary, reflect dangerous plants, or reveal how dependent sweetness is on ecology, climate, and chance. That complexity is one reason it remains so compelling. Many foods become dull once you understand them. This one grows stranger. The more closely you look, the less it behaves like a harmless background ingredient, and the more it resembles a concentrated piece of the living world, full of value, risk, and surprise. Praise alone cannot contain it. Honey deserves admiration, but also respect. It belongs to bees first, to landscapes second, and to us only after that long chain of transformations. Its wildness is part of its power, and part of why it never becomes ordinary. Infants should not eat honey, even though adults usually can. This is one of the most important warnings in the whole subject because it feels so counterintuitive. Adults often treat honey as wholesome and safe, yet babies under 1 year old are different in a crucial way. Their digestive systems are still developing, which means they are more vulnerable to certain spores that can be present in honey without causing problems for older children or adults. That contrast makes the warning easy to forget and important to repeat. A substance that seems natural and nourishing can still be the wrong choice at the wrong age. The danger is not that honey turns bad only for infants. It is that the infant gut can provide conditions in which those spores become much more serious. So here, safety depends not only on the food, but on the stage of life of the person eating it. One sweet spoon can be ordinary for an adult and inappropriate for a baby. Spores harmless to adults can be dangerous for babies. That small biological detail explains the larger warning. Honey can sometimes contain spores of bacteria that do not usually trouble healthy older people because mature digestive systems prevent them from taking hold in the same way. In infants, especially those younger than 1 year, the situation is different. The spores may germinate in the gut and produce toxin, leading to infant botulism, a rare but serious illness. What makes this so striking is that the risk comes from something invisible and naturally occurring, not from obvious spoilage. The honey may smell fine, taste fine, and look perfectly normal. That is why the advice is so firm. You cannot inspect your way out of the hazard. You can only avoid giving it to babies. It is a reminder that food safety is not always about freshness alone. Sometimes it is about biology, timing, and who is consuming the food in the first place. Honey can preserve, nourish, heal, intoxicate, and occasionally harm. Very few foods contain such a wide range of human experiences. In one context, honey sits in a sealed jar for years, resisting decay with astonishing stubbornness. In another, it sweetens bread, supports healing traditions, or appears in carefully prepared medical dressings. Elsewhere, fermentation turns it toward mead, and toxic plant chemistry turns it toward intoxication or danger. That breadth is extraordinary. Most ingredients remain in one lane. Honey seems to move across several at once. It can be food, medicine, trade good, ritual object, preservative, and rare warning sign, all depending on circumstance. This is why it never settles into something merely cute or quaint. It is too versatile, too storied, and too entangled with both comfort and risk. A single substance made by bees manages to touch nourishment, chemistry, culture, and danger in one long arc. That range is not a contradiction to be resolved. It is the whole fascination of honey. No sweetener on earth carries quite so many contradictions. It is soothing, yet sometimes dangerous. It feels ancient, yet continues to surprise modern science. It belongs to wild insects, yet sips in neat jars on supermarket shelves. It is associated with purity, though it is also faked precisely because the genuine article is so prized. It can remain stable for astonishing lengths of time, yet under the wrong conditions, it may ferment and change. These opposites are not accidents. They are the reason honey refuses to become boring. Sugar can be sweet, but it does not usually carry forests, rituals, medicine, archaeology, fraud, and toxic mountain flowers in the same story. Honey does. It has one foot in the hive and one in human imagination, which is why it has been treated as treasure, remedy, delicacy, and mystery for so long. Its contradictions are not flaws around the edges. They are the shape of the subject itself, and they make every spoonful more interesting. Honey is both a food and a record of ecology. That may be the most beautiful truth of all. When you eat it, you are not only tasting sweetness, you are meeting the outcome of relationships between flowers, weather, soil, season, bees, and landscape. Some of that record may appear in flavor. Some may remain hidden in trace compounds or pollen. Some may be readable only through careful analysis. Yet the principle remains the same. Honey stores evidence of the living world that produced it. It is food, yes, but also a kind of ecological document written in sugars, aromas, and microscopic clues. This is why the subject grows larger the more closely you look. A jar is never just a jar. It is a summary of a place and a time, condensed by insects into something edible. That gives it unusual dignity among everyday foods, to understand honey properly is to see that a landscape can, for a moment, become something you can hold, study, and taste. The deeper you look, the stranger honey becomes. At the surface, it seems simple enough. Sweet, golden, familiar. Then, the layers begin opening. It is made by a superorganism shaped by flower chemistry, preserved by multiple defenses, altered by texture and storage, tied to ancient medicine, capable of carrying microscopic evidence of place, and in rare cases influenced by toxins powerful enough to unsettle the body. Add to that the history of trade, ritual, fraud, wild hunting, and infant safety warnings, and the subject starts to feel almost endless. That is the final wonder. Honey does not shrink under attention. It expands. Each answer leads toward another question about bees, plants, climate, chemistry, culture, or time. What looked at first like a pleasant pantry staple turns out to be one of the most densely stored foods on Earth. Perhaps that is why people have never stopped being captivated by it. The closer you draw, the more mystery seems to gather in the light. As we come to the end of our journey through honey, we leave behind a world that feels much larger than it first appeared. What began as something familiar, a spoonful in a jar, opened into an entire hidden universe. We wandered through flowers and seasons, through hives alive with purpose, through ancient tombs, mountain cliffs, forest trails, and the long memory of human history. We found sweetness, survival, danger, medicine, mystery, and the patient labor of countless bees, turning fleeting nectar into something that can outlast ages. And perhaps that is the lasting wonder of it. Honey is never only honey. It is sunlight gathered into petals, petals gathered by wings, and wings guided home across fields we may never fully see. It carries traces of weather, blossom, place, and time. It holds the work of a colony, the shape of a landscape, and the strange beauty of a world always busier and more intricate than it seems. Now the story can begin to drift and soften. Let your thoughts grow looser. Let the images settle where they like. A hillside of flowers, the low hum of bees in warm air, the golden stillness of a hive deep in its own small civilization. There is nothing more to follow now, nothing to hold on to too tightly. Just the slow fading of one fascinating world into rest. And if you are still awake in a little while, there will be another video waiting for you on screen, ready to carry you into another corner of science and wonder. If you enjoy these sleepy explorations, you can always like, subscribe, or leave a comment below and help more wandering minds find their way here. Sleep well and good night.